Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Sorry, we had a little overrun in the PCERT crash course here, so we're a few minutes delayed, but yeah, welcome to those online as well. Just to let you know that we're also doing this with our virtual audience, so maybe there'll be some questions from the audience as well online. But of course, in the room, we also have people here to enjoy this interactive session. So title of this session is In Conversation with Nemetschek and Autodesk, the past, present, and future of interoperability workflows. So we have 4 panelists here, 2 from each organization. I'd like to introduce them or ask them to introduce themselves. I think it's better because they'll do themselves more justice. My name is Aidan Mercer. I'm the marketing director of buildingSMART International, and it's actually my pleasure to be the moderator of this session. I did ask them if I could be direct and give them some tricky questions, and they willfully accepted. So I'd also encourage the audience to think of some questions that might arise during this, and we can make this fully interactive with you as well. So looking forward to this session. So maybe we start with Bjorn and we can work our way along. Just a little introduction, a bit about yourself.
Hello. I'm Bjorn Stangeland from Norway. Been in this industry for too long, 40 years. Formerly with the DDS CAD. Went into Nemetschek Group from 2013 onwards. I'm currently working with the Nemetschek Design Division, Head of Strategic Partnerships. So that's me. I've been involved in buildingSMART since the late 90s. So.
Yes, hello, my name's Angel Velez. I am part of the Revit team. I was started with Revit in 1999, so not quite so long, basically a child. And I've been working on IFC since 2004. And I'm actually particularly excited to be here because this is what started me working on IFC. You know, back in 2004, there was a little thing called CoreNet based on IFC 2x2. And that was the initial impetus for putting IFC in Revit. And I thought that would be a couple of months of my work, and I was off by a little bit. But so here I am. Nice to be here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marc Nezet. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer of Nemetschek Group, a year and a half at Nemetschek, and before that, coming from the MEP world, 23 years in Schneider Electric.
Yes, good morning, everybody. The name's Marek Suchotsky from Autodesk. I have the role of Industry Association Strategy Lead, which means managing the relationship with professional bodies, institutions, and standards groups like buildingSMART, where I spent over 20 years in industry and before my 15 years here at Autodesk. And unfortunately, like Bjorn, I actually have been involved in the organization since 1999. When I was in industry.
So we've got a lot of heritage here, and that's good to see, because I think buildingSMART is made up of people that have put a lot of years into this enterprise, and I think that's really nice when we know that we have a solid foundation, much like the standards that we develop. Yeah, so I just wanted to start really, I suppose, about the agreement that you signed. I believe it was last year, and I don't know if you want to give us perspectives from each side about why that came about, how that came about.
Yeah, maybe I would start. So let's say the agreement between Autodesk and Nemetschek originated from the following statement: we might be competitors on the application level, but what we owe to our users, to our respective communities of users, is a much better integrated workflows in data management, file management, user role management, model management, and so on and so forth. So it started by not taking necessarily our own interest first, but the interest of our respective user base. That all started that way, and I think also it was translating a form of maturity of companies, especially alongside with a cloud maturity. It means you can be competitors in applications while you collaborate on workflows and on the cloud benefits.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I've just brought up some of the words we did when we announced our collaboration, and it was intentionally to help our customers achieve their business goals more effectively, and that we continue to open our environment to partners and even competitors. So I think the reality is that the agreement is there to support users to better leverage the available and future technologies by having these more open agreements, and to interoperate around data, because there's value for everyone to be gained.
And then does buildingSMART seem like a logical place that further discussions can be had and that agreements can be aligned and even software could be connected?
Definitely. I mean, buildingSMART, OpenBIM is all about interoperability. So what we are doing here together, as we both are competitors in one sense, but we also have complementary solutions. So it's not only a competitive situation. So Mark mentioned this cloud thing. So we have been for years doing OpenBIM using IFC file-based things. We are currently working and very closely together with Autodesk, Bentley, Trimble, etc., and all of the other software vendors. We had this implementer meeting in Budapest a few weeks ago. So we're working with this IFC 5 version, and that ticks a lot of the boxes we need to face the future. Being able to separate information in different chunks to do, let's say, incremental updates, meaning only update with changes rather than sending whole files with the whole model with everything contained, and a lot of other things. And as we are kind of always ahead of the standards, I mean, it's the nature of software. You create something and you have some good workflows, and we figure out we need to standardize this so we can kind of share it and involve also other software vendors. So that's basically what we're doing. We are cooperating very closely together and assisting buildingSMART with the IFC 5 development, while we're also testing some ideas and some stuff in between ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add a little bit to that. I mean, on the history side, I mean, Bjorn has been my coworker for longer than most of my coworkers, right? We've been working together on IFC since, again, 2005, 2004, and this is an excellent community around figuring out what our common problems are, and coming up with solutions. And again, as he said, this has historically been a file-based issue, and that's just not going to be true moving forward. I think we're both very eager to see IFC 5 progress and to influence IFC 5 based on our own needs and those of our community. Okay, I didn't need background music for that, but right. So to speaking more about the IFC 5, I do hope that we can take the things that we find when we are working with each other and say, hey, this is something we want to be an open standard, because at the end of the day, wherever we can use an open standard, we want to use an open standard, right? So that's definitely the foundation that everything else is built on.
And can I chip in, actually? Bjorn said something quite interesting there, which is, you know, standards are lagging technology. Because if you're going to have a standard, and I worked with British standards for over 15 years, standards are there to reflect good or established practice. And if we can collaborate together on topics like IFC 5, then we can innovate together to determine what constitutes the next good. And Bjorn mentioned cloud, as did Mark. You know, we're moving to a new paradigm of how we share information. It would be somewhat aspirational or even idiotic to say, okay, we're going to write down what the new standard for tomorrow looks like. We don't know what it's going to look like. So it's by necessity that companies like ours get involved in interoperability agreements to determine what that future good and hopefully future established practice might look like.
So this topic of interoperability, sometimes I feel is maybe the word is maybe how would you describe it? Interoperability to me is like a word that we don't fully appreciate the true meaning of it. So we say it. What do we mean when we say it? So the foundation of buildingSMART in 1994 was the International Alliance for Interoperability. So the core idea behind it was we need some interoperability, and actually we still come back to the same word almost that we we started with the inception. So do partnerships agreement truly address interoperability, or do we have to wait for the standards to enable more interoperabilities? So something like IFC5, when we're moving away from file-based exchanges, there is a much easier way forward for organizations like yours with your solutions to actually start pointing to one another with APIs, and those workflows do become truly interoperable. Is this what we're waiting for, this kind of turning point?
So I think there is notion of timeline. Let's say the overall openness on interop, and by the way, it's a good point to better define interop, because interoperability 10, 15 years ago is not having the same value as today, and probably still not the value also that it's going to be in 5, 10 years from now. But let's say basically we all know that to propagate and get the proper deployment and adoption of a standard takes time. If in between two vendors who has very, very strong commitment towards buildingSMART International are making also some one-to-one bespoke integration, again, to the benefit of their user, it doesn't sound like being not coordinated. Let's say for me, there is a timeline. There is absolutely the entire industry that has to go more towards interop. Meanwhile, when two strong players want to give quick and early benefit to a bespoke integration, we just have to do it. And interop, I mean, as we were discussing yesterday in the opening session, today when we take I mean, a lot of our customers are small and mid-sized companies at Nemetschek. There are an architect office of 10, 20 people. It could be also engineering consultant of 20, 30, 50 people. Those are entrepreneurs. And project, or let's say interoperability for them, is knowledge management. To make sure that whatever would be, let's say, the issues they face into the workforce, then the people, the new onboarding new generation, getting some old-timer colleagues leaving or whatever, it's all about knowledge management. Whatever you know from your past project, usually a lot of information and data attached to proprietary tools is preventing them to properly harvest from all what they built in 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So we use them today to manage their knowledge in a much better way. So it's all part of their of protecting their business in integrity. So that's the way I would define the interop. Is not just giving access to more data exchange between two applications or two tools. It's also to enable architects, consultants, engineers of all kinds to manage knowledge, especially when they are business owners.
I just want to build on that. And by the way, I don't want to fall down the AI rabbit hole here, but Mark said something quite important there, which is we do have an aging workforce. We want to make sure we retain that, pardon me, that knowledge. We want to make sure that when we design and construct new buildings and infrastructure assets, that they're done on firm foundations of, again, what good looks like. So if we can encapsulate and capture that knowledge, now that we go to more structured data, so whether it's using IFC or proprietary formats is kind of irrelevant, if we can access and use that data to in future train whether it's AI or machine learning routines, then surely that's a good thing, because we'll be able to, whether you're using Autodesk, Nemetschek, Esri, and other software, let's have better access to that codified good, because otherwise we'll have AI that learns from bad because it's unstructured, unproven data. So I think these kind of agreements are, by the way, not exclusive. You know, we of course collaborate with other companies, but unless we do this, then everyone sits in their little silos.
Question for Angel. I mean, you've been really instrumental in the Revit journey, really, and I wonder, how do you prioritize resources internally around how to develop the product and make interoperability amongst your own products within Autodesk, but also then externally with partnerships? So you have more partnerships than just Nemetschek, but you have a huge ecosystem, right? So how do you prioritize that when you have such a big user base?
I mean, yeah, that's interesting, and it actually goes to the previous question too, because at the end of the day, I don't think interoperability is defined by us or by buildingSMART. It's actually defined by our users, and it's defined by workflows, right? We do not need to solve the problem of how do you have the infinite combinations of our products exchanging all data for all reasons, right? We can look at our users and say, you know, what are their main workflows and what are their, you know, kind of points that they're really getting stuck on. And that's how I can help direct our resources towards, okay, what are exactly the pain points here? Now, of course, kind of in a vacuum, I do turn to buildingSMART and say, okay, what's an ISC 4.3, right? That's what we're going to be supporting now. But again, at the end of the day, our users, I mean, we have many different ways that they communicate with us. We have a GitHub site for our open source. We get a lot of requests there. Obviously, through agreements with Autodesk, we have other, you know, bigger users who ask for things. But we do need to prioritize. Again, it's not, it is not possible to solve all problems. There's no development base large enough to do that. So we really want to figure out what the most important workflows are and kind of concentrate on that. So, but really, yeah, listening to our customers and finding out what they're trying to do.
And Bjorn, you know, from an Nemetschek point of view, you have lots of brands. So the internal work that goes on in making sure those workflows support your users, but then also you've got this partnership agreement. So how do you prioritize your internal resources, you know, obviously with the external partnership?
So I think both Nemetschek and Autodesk have many different software solutions. I mean, for some here, they think about Autodesk as being Revit, but it's much more the same as also with Nemetschek. And it's not only for the AEC industry. We also have multimedia or entertainment and that kind of stuff as well, where we also cooperate. Prioritization. When we ask users, when we do surveys, of course, we try to figure out where are their pain points, what are wish lists, what is their higher request. And from being in the past, maybe more about new features, is much more about interoperability and preserving information, making it accessible, etc., rather than having feature. I think our products are very capable of doing the actual work for a specific person that does his own thing, but they want to be more integrated with the others, both internally between Nemetschek products, but also with external software, third party, as we call it, from the inside.
And Mark, do you have any examples where this agreement has actually borne any results for users? I mean, is there any examples where you can cite that this agreement has helped current users, or is that too early?
No, I mean it's both. It's of course we have already some clear and concrete example, but yes, it's as well. We want more. We want to give more benefits to the users than what we give to today. And the specificity, as as mentioned by Björn, the specificity of Nemetschek being, let's say, not going for one size fits all as one product, but really taking care of an Archicad community, an Allplan community, a Vectorworks community, a Solibri community, a Dirofus community, a Bluebeam community, and you take all of those tools, they have their own community, and the intent is just to delight them. But to delight them in silo is not anymore enough. And we have especially on the I would maybe point out three cases, but we have definitely the relationship of Solibri user community with as well the Autodesk and Revit community, which is an important integration, and the recent beta launch of Solibri Checkpoint Cloud is a good example of that. We have a second case which is especially valid in US, where we have a huge community of we don't call them users; it's a community of fans in Bluebeam, and a lot of them are also into an ACC environment. So what do we say? We ignore them, or we give them an augmented benefit on both sides. So this and here we had also a partner who was helping us to do that connection, and we gave already concrete steps this year in between a better connection between Bluebeam and ACC. And then we have, of course, as well the community of Archicad user who needs to collaborate with some of their peers who are Revit users, and sometimes it's Mac and PC community, and again we owe them that connection, because they all love the environment that they have been used to for 10, 15, 20 years, and so we have that typically in the roadmap of Archicad is really embedding enhancement in terms of interoperability with Revit.
Marek, we discussed this a bit yesterday, but is it sometimes seen that proprietary is a bad thing?
I mean, in this audience, yes.
Is that true? Put your hand up.
Yeah, I think the buildingSMART community is free love, free water, and everybody does the right thing. But the reality is that all of you who are working in industry, you take on contracts, you have to deliver obligations, and you can't deliver with the big projects that we have unless you use some sort of technology. I'm sorry, if you just did everything with pen and paper, then great, but that's not the reality. And so companies like ours and others that are in this room invest heavily to make sure that they provide, whether it's a design or information management toolkit or something out, or geospatial. I see Mark from Esri's in the room. The investment companies make is substantial, and it's to give that security that I'm using the right tool for the job. So we shouldn't say that proprietary is bad. And the purpose of us sitting around this table here is that we're saying that, yeah, we invest in our own tools and we're going to compete. There's no question that we're not kind of segregating the market to suit, our local strengths. But it's about making sure that data that we've already talked about is available when you federate information. I just wrote down some thoughts actually on this whole topic, which is Mark started off talking about the cloud, and he presented that in his keynote yesterday. So we are in a new paradigm. We're no longer working at the desktop. And when I was in industry, and even when I joined Autodesk, AutoCAD is still kind of very prevalent, and occasionally some alternative CAD tools. But what it was is AutoCAD was a hammer, and you hit every problem with AutoCAD. So every single design issue was a nail, because you could basically deliver any project with AutoCAD because you did some drawings, great. But we're not in that world anymore. For decades, we've had a plethora of tools. So we had a toolkit, and that toolkit isn't a single vendor toolkit. So you use the best tool for the job, and you try to bring that together. And the interoperability need was that not all of those tools were creating information that could be shared. Now, as we move to the cloud, we now have a slightly different issue, which is, and workflow was mentioned by Angel and Bjorn, is that, you know, we've all got smartphone devices, and what do? You download some apps. These apps tend to be quite single focused. So if you imagine we're creating data in the cloud with not a big tool, like a big product like Revit, we're going to have an app to do structural analysis on a model. You'll have an app to extract certain data to populate something else. So what you need is consistent data. So I think by doing these agreements, we're there learning together, so that those workflows on consistent data will enable industry to deliver the projects in a new way. And I think that's the thing that we're going to enter, is a completely new way of working. And well, it's already partly there. But if we don't have consistent ways to share data, then that opportunity will not be available.
What's the opportunity for smaller vendors in the market? If the larger ones sign agreements, does this mean, you know, there's opportunity as well for, at buildingSMART, we represent a lot of different organizations from large to small software companies. And what we want to make sure is that there's also an opportunity for smaller vendors that deliver specific solutions within the ecosystem, that they also can contribute as well. So does this extend this opportunity now for the interoperable environment? Do you think, Bjorn, maybe as a thought that this is actually also available for everyone?
So my involvement in buildingSMART came back when I was a small vendor, a Norwegian software company, and we saw the only way we could kind of be a part of workflows and stuff like that was to use open standards. And I think this is really key. I mean, for even more important for smaller software vendors to have open standards that they can use, but get involved. That's something else. So I mean, if we look at buildingSMART, we have this summits twice a year, but we also have this implementers forum or implementer assembly meeting. We had one in Budapest a few weeks ago, as I mentioned, and this is open for small vendors and large vendors, and it's get involved. You can influence the standards, come with your ideas, present the workflows, pain point from whatever industry you make software for, and we'll deal with it together with buildingSMART. So get involved, I would say, to smaller vendors, as I did back in the days. I'm still here, so at least it was good for me or for my company.
I mean, and I also started with a small company called Charles River Software. So, and used the Open Design Alliance to, you know, read DWG files back in the day. But no, I think we are trying to build an ecosystem, or several ecosystems that interoperate. And as Mark said, the future is these apps, right? And so it is a much simpler thing to create than a megalith project. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for someone with a very good idea to solve a problem to, you know, kind of get in a way that might actually be more difficult now. Now, to the buildingSMART side, I'm going to take the opportunity to say that having an open standard does very much help. And I think that's why it's important to have, you know, kind of buildingSMART International really control the IFC open standard as much as possible, instead of having, especially a small company, having to deal with many variants of it that could occur. You know, if I'm a small company, I don't have the capacity to think about what Brazilian standards are on top of this international standards, right? So I do hope that we are, you know, friendly towards the next bright ideas, both as vendors and as the buildingSMART community. So
yeah, what I would add as well, and it resonates with your first point on the defining interoperability, where if we say, okay, it's knowledge management in the way you can leverage information on a project, on a company base, and so on and so forth. But then the second aspect is a cross-disciplinary aspects of interop. So the interop is not only between Nemetschek and Autodesk, but the imperative for interoperability is between also the disciplinary topics that are usually the expertise, the value that had been created is very siloed per discipline. But we know that today, I mean, thanks to AI, talking about the little rabbit, you can leverage much more between structural design and mechanical and electrical. You can optimize much more your structural design if you have the proper insights coming from your thermal, your energy modeling, and then your electrical model. So here it's not question of a small or a big vendor. It's question of vendors that created really added value, vertical added value that you can benefit from in horizontal and transverse workflows. And we need to facilitate that. And again, the model check, Solibri or those type of application are very good examples of the values that you can create by overlaying the disciplinary, and but it's even much more content that we can get out of those disciplines. So that's, I would say, it's not question of small and big vendors. It's question of added value that you can create to large user base based on cross-disciplinary topic.
Yeah, and that kind of to kind of close out this question about small versus big. So this community is developing the data standards. So we've got, IFC 4.3, a community effort that everybody can access, and hopefully IFC 5 will lead to a new paradigm of data structures and ways that, whether you're small or large, you can read and write from IFC 5. And I just want to make it quite clear that this agreement with Autodesk and Nemetschek is, we're not giving them some secret source or vice versa. Nemetschek have just been exposed to Autodesk APIs that are readily available to anyone already. So we're not trying to giving them a back door into something else. It's trying to leverage the same connection components that we already provide. And certainly you mentioned ACC, the Autodesk Construction Cloud, that is driven by an ecosystem of partner solutions and competitor solutions, small and large, because we firmly believe that the only way that people can do those unique specialist services that might be needed in Brazil or somewhere is by a local Brazilian company. But it's got to be to the consistent data store, not another store that needs translation and ETL processes and other kind of complicated things where management consultants make a lot of money. We want to make this a much more accessible thing. So, to be absolutely clear, Nemetschek and Autodesk are not doing something unique. We are only collaborating to get it right when we do share information. So when Bluebeam connects to ACC, if there are any glitches, of course, we'll have a closer dialogue around that, but it's not using something else. We're not trying to make this exclusive. It's about being more inclusive and showing the value of federating and collaborating.
Yeah, maybe I can just add to the nature of this, as we all have APIs that we provide to third-party software vendors. So what is this agreement about? It's about that we appoint a contact person on each side so we can resolve things quickly. It's about providing, without any money involved, licenses so we can test the interoperability solutions. So we have Revit licenses, they will have ArchiCAD or whatever licenses they want from Nemetschek. This is the core of it. But basically that we work closer and we have the contact persons defined. We have annual, or not annual, we have periodic meetings where we coordinate, report on what we have done. Do we have any issues? So it's just working more structured and closer together, mutually, both ways.
Okay, that was actually my question, was if it is just a case that you're exposed to APIs that you're could have been exposed to before, then what is the real value? And we've just explained that nicely. But before I go on to the next topic, I just wanted to pause there and see if anyone from the audience had any questions before I move on to another topic. It's not like buildingSMART to be shy. Come on, we have to. They make me pick on people. Okay, there's a hand up there. Havard.
Thank you. This is Howard from Catenda in Norway, representing a small software company. Thank you for being so open in an open dialogue and open environment. I have a question regarding the OpenCDE API that's somehow being developed a little bit strangely inside buildingSMART International on a side track or something, but that will be a natural place for such an agreement to engage and take part and set up like new developments and contribute to expanding the OpenCDE API. So I'm wondering if that's something is on your agenda.
You want to go?
Sure. The honest answer is I don't know. Do you know?
So I've been involved with the OpenCDE community. There's regular calls on a Monday, and I've provided contacts within our ACC community, and we've had involvement in it. Because we already have a very open solution stack, we anticipate we'll be able to engage with the OpenCDE approach, but we don't seem to have a need at the moment to, let's say, influence it heavily. We'll allow it to evolve. And I'll make a completely different comment, which is I sit on the British Standards Technical Committee that wrote the ISO 19650 standards, and that they've been involved and have been their subject matter representative to CEN European Standards Working Groups, some of which went round CDEs. And my caution, and this is definitely not as an Autodesk person, but actually as a standards person, is when we share information, what we don't want to do is tie it down to this is what a CDE should look like, which unfortunately some of the work did, where it was trying to define the features and functions, because we provide software that is used on projects of all scales. So whether it's a house extension to a new tunnel between Denmark and Germany, if we say that a CDE has to have all of these features and functions and can only share information in these workflows, then what we've done is we've literally killed the vast proportion of smaller vendors and actually prevented an architect to share some information with a local engineer using technology, because they'll have to go back to paper and post, because otherwise they don't fit into the function set. So I think one of the observations I've had is that sometimes when we get into these standards worlds, we go a bit too far, and actually the standards either don't get used or they get people do everything other than follow the standard because the standard has made it too restrictive. So and it's where I've got a little bit of anxiety around making OpenCDE less open, because actually it becomes a closed workflow set.
I think the suite of APIs that we have under the umbrella of OpenCDE as well is important that we do address that, though, from standardization point of view, because I think we need to make sure that the narrative remains available for everyone as well to contribute to that journey too. So I think that's important. Any other questions before I move to the next topic? No. Okay. I just wanted to jump onto the topic of AI, because I think it's probably worth exploring a little bit, because I think personally, I see it as something hugely influential in the next few years, and probably already is today. In terms of AI and standards, and also inside your view from a vendor point of view, how much do you think this will transform the landscape from a standards point of view? And I'm actually going to address that to Angel, because I somehow feel that AI is going to really influence standardization. But then how much do you also have to work on the delivery of AI within your own suite of applications?
Yeah, so were you eavesdropping earlier at all? Okay, just checking. Yeah, I was actually thinking about AI and IFC specifically earlier on, and the potential for IFC 5. So, you know, in our companies, right, when we're looking at AI, the biggest issue, right, is how do we process our own data, which we have a lot of. And at least for current models of AI, you really want text, right? You want, and our file formats are nothing like text. So IFC really has a potential to be kind of an intermediate, almost kind of a pseudo token for teaching these language models. And in particular, I see that as a potential driver for IFC5. Because a lot of this data is going to be based on cloud, not desktop data. You don't have access to millions of desktop files. You have access to cloud files. And so I do think we do need to think about, in the development of IFC5 especially, how do we optimize it for an AI future? So I don't know that that's a question that's been addressed yet, and I don't see Leon in the room anywhere. But it may be something that we need to start thinking about when we start continue to develop IFC5. But even existing IFC can be used because, again, it's words. That's one of the nice things about IFC is, again, 100 years from now, you can open it up and read what someone intended. Even if no one knows what IFC 4.3 was, you can at least guess. So that is already somewhat AI friendly, but we can make it much, much more. And I think that is probably something we want to try to do.
And Mark, I know you mentioned this yesterday, but how do you see the role playing out?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we are a European headquartered company, so the thing we are definitely looking at extremely carefully is all the impact that the EU AI Act, the Digital Service Act, and the GDPR is having on the field of possibilities, in order to properly architecture our AI stack. It means there will be probably foundational models, there will be specialized model to our domains, but there will be also we want to give also the opportunity on probably a third layer that will be proprietary to our users. Because point number one, the project data is not our property. Anything coming out of the usage of our software is the property of our customer. And we have to be extremely strong on that standpoint. Second, when you start to touch disciplines, most of our disciplines in structural design, in MEP, as well in architectural design, you have not only an intellectual property right associated to the design, to the drawings, but you get as well liabilities behind it. So how do you associate the protection of those liabilities, the transparency also towards insurance company and whatever. So we want to be extremely careful there. Point number three, especially in line with the fact that a lot of our users are entrepreneurs, small and mid-sized companies. So for them, we talk here about their business integrity. Do we want them to be displaced? Do we want to have kind of disintermediation of those of a thermal consultant, of an electrical engineer? Absolutely no. Triple time no. We want their knowledge to be protected. We want them to do more cross-disciplinary, bringing their domain of expertise to help and optimize some other aspects of the systems of a building, but we want them to be in full control of their data, intellectual property, liability, and protection of their business integrity. So that's the first thing we are hardly working on in a very concrete way. That's an exercise that we are doing this on the first half of this year, in order to be able to give have a proper structure behind the benefit that we're going to give. And the benefit we're going to give will be probably based on 3 levels. We have this quarter the release of our first AI assistant, which is based on the knowledge that we have for many years on our own software, on testing our software, on the features and knowledge that we have. So Archicad is the first one to release an AI assistant, but it's quite easy. Classical prompt, and you get access to the domain specialized knowledge. Then we will have a second family of features that will be more around data management, substitution, and the opportunity again to better leverage knowledge, but in that case quite deep, especially manufacture knowledge is important to us to give a better benefit from the rules that we have in the software. And the last but not least, the elephant in the room is really the opportunities to match data with advanced mathematical models. So it means what? It means advanced simulation and virtualization capabilities, material aging, mechanical, in the mechanical also properties, electrical will be also extremely important there. And this is what we are working on. And for that, we have an institute called the George Nemetschek Institute. So from our founder, which is an institute attached to the Technical University of Munich, and where we have different PhDs spread across 14 different nationalities. And we do that for the common good. It means we don't own the IP or that research center, but it's specialized for the AECO industry. And I would say probably 20-30% of the PhDs are on material aging scenarios in order to give advanced capabilities. We have some other ones which are simple things, how you match images to geometries, how you go back also to voice to geometries, for example. So we have many different things that we are working on there. And 1/3, it's a lot of interdisciplinary. So the unique opportunity of AI is that through the, again, mathematical model around the multi-physics of building materials could make us so much smarter in the way then we interact with a thermal and electrical model. So this is the 3 level. There is a low-hanging fruit, a bit the buzz of today, but we need to be part of that. There is a second level of more intelligence based on existing data, and there is a third one, which is really the cross-disciplinary simulation, virtualization that we need to bring to users.
Lex, I think you had your hand up there.
It was a question based on the OpenCDE approach combined with AI maybe, but I was wondering how you all look to the concept of data spaces that's coming from other industries. They are making European Data Act, they are creating data spaces on certain like medical data space or manufacturing data spaces, and to collect the information from the owner with APIs to the location where you want to use the space. It's a different approach than every data on one platform and then use it in the platform. But the concept from data space is more the owner owns a certain data service. You give access to anyone who wants to use it. And then, so I was curious about your opinion of data spaces.
I'll make a comment. I can't claim to be familiar with this particular approach. So first thing I'll say is that we, and I'm absolutely certain Nemetschek, our entire way of working is to obey any local legislative constraints. Yeah, so we don't work outside of the rules. We always ensure we follow the rules. And actually that makes our life challenging because those rules are different, say, here in Singapore to in Germany to in Sweden to in the UK, to the USA and so forth. So we sometimes maybe work at apparently glacial pace when it comes to perhaps deploying a new service in a certain country because we're obeying the available rules. Now, on the concept of data spaces, I'll give a slightly different answer, not because I'm trying to be a politician, but because when we look at AI, we've recognized that there is a need. I talked about what does good look like, and if we're going to train our AI on shared data, then that data needs to be permitted to be used. So we have public data, which is what ChatGPT and other services exploit, and that's why quite often they come up with slightly garbaged answers, or worse still, illegal answers because they've stolen that data without permission. So they're republishing perhaps works. I mean, there's a lot of work issues happening in the music industry, for example, where musicians, I think some of them clubbed together a few weeks ago and released an album with no music because they said that's what music's going to be like tomorrow, because if you steal my work, I'm not going to give it away anymore. So we're not going to have people pretending to be like Coldplay or Elton John because the AI's learned what that music sounds like, so we don't want that to be the case. And within Autodesk, we are looking at how our AI can be trained. Now, we have public data, which generally is poor. We then have private data. And I think private data falls into two categories in my mind for our industry, which is if you're an engineering consultant, you work for multiple customers. So you have your data on the projects that you have worked on, but that data itself, you must obey the contract of your project. So your client, if your client is a public owner, maybe managing national critical infrastructure, you should make sure that data is restricted within your own company and absolutely not put it on the web somewhere for other people to look at, which ironically what happened in some of the early days of BIM when people were publishing all their Revit or ArchiCAD models online, going, look at the amazing models I've done. And going, well, that's, that hospital perhaps shouldn't have its models published online. That's probably not a bad idea. I mean, I think in Breaking Bad, they had to tattoo the CAD on the back of the chap to be able to break out of the prison. Whereas actually he could have just gone online and grabbed the prison model. So clearly what we don't want is to release unapproved data. But then if we're going to train our AI, and whether it's in open data spaces or something else, industry probably needs to get together and say, healthcare, can we have examples of good healthcare designs that can be anonymized, but so that we know that if we build a facility like this, we can actually get the NMR machine into the building and not have to cut parts of the wall out because it's too big to fit into the theatre that it's going to go into. Can we make sure it's a facility that can be cleaned, and then there are routes to move patients around, and that it can be evacuated effectively, and so forth and so forth. So if industry subdomains can come together and say, we will share some models for you, the wider community, but also the software industry to start training its engines, then we might get to really starting to leverage the potential of AI because it's working on good examples. And we in Autodesk have mostly been training our AI on synthetic models. So these are probably okay because we know what things could be looking like, and we can do analyses on those synthetic models. And we are engaging with our customers to see about releasing some data, but only based on their agreement. And my last comment will be, if you want to find out about how we treat people's data, go to autodesk.com/trust. We have the Trust Center. Unfortunately, center is spelled incorrectly because Mark and I would spell it with centre, not center. But if you can find that, have a look in there. We talk about 3 areas. We're trustworthy by design. So we architect our software to be secure. That's how we do it, and all our services. We're transparent and accountable. So we're kind of open as possible about how we'd use data. We don't reveal everything because there's some obviously proprietary things, and we're ethical and empathetic. And what we mean by that is we want to meet industry expectations. So, you know, we're not going to go off and do our own thing. We'll actually try to make sure that we provide services that are appropriate. Now, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but, you know, we've got to be very careful that we don't just do stuff because somebody's made stuff available.
Maybe a short comment on also the analogy with industry, especially I would say industry verticals are usually much more structured or today as per either data marketplace, historian, data hubs that you could access and create value on the top of some existing data set that are managed by manufacturers, in industrial operators. And we know all the density of data that could come out from the manufacturing process. Is it in oil and gas, pharmaceutical? They are much more advanced than us. The other part of inspiration is probably as well on the transport industry, especially the air transport or rail rolling stock. There are also much more verticalized data on which one it's possible to create value, and this is much more structured and organized than in our industry. So I would say both the marketplaces and the data hub is definitely probably some thinking that could be given also within the frame of buildingSMART in international without any doubt. This being said, and when you look building from an operation standpoint, you know, let's imagine you are an operator of social housing. You can already get marketplace with available data in some countries on the criminality, and you can correlate your addresses of your building portfolio, your asset portfolio, to some variants of criminality reports and statistics on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, and then you can also take better informed decision that where that exists. Is it really a practice in our industry in general to leverage and to have a proper mapping of those available data marketplace? Not yet, but you're right. It's definitely an area. Data marketplace, data hub, largely adopted with an ecosystem that come and create value on the top of those data. This is probably where our industry could leverage from the manufacturing world.
Can I just add, because we talked a lot about many things here, but many of you have been listening to presentations about IFC 5 when we're talking here about protecting data or customers' property in terms of IP, etc. IFC 5 has this great capability that you can actually split information. So you can have the information you want to share and you think it's shareable, and the things that you want to keep for yourself because that's your asset. So just to tie it back to buildingSMART, so to speak. So that's one of the great things about IFC 5. Talking about AI, we as also Autodesk, we invest in or we follow many startup companies talking about these small app developers. Their challenge in many cases, for instance, that they work with some sustainability or whatever, it's not necessarily the code or the mathematics, it's the content, the material specifications, all of that stuff, local for the different geographies or countries. AI is good in structuring data, putting it together, and that's where we see kind of usage also in terms of providing it in open formats as well. That is really, really a big obstacle for many, many brilliant ideas that cannot be realized because it's simply too expensive for them to build up all the assets they need to do these calculations. But just as a comment.
But I was thank you for all your answers. But with buildingSMART, we agree about the schema, the IFC schema. That's a standard, but we never talk about the transaction about the data. And I think maybe it can be an interesting topic for buildingSMART as a community to discuss. Maybe we can create a data space requirements on all the API requirements or the let's investigate the topic data spaces and then maybe decide what can we do from buildingSMART perspective. I think that's an advice for buildingSMART, Adrian.
Noted. We're thank you.
Let me just add
Yeah, please.
real quick, because I do think it's an interesting. So first of all, it is an interesting, where does buildingSMART end and where do the users of IFC5 begin, right, is one interesting thing. The other thing that I think is potentially interesting about IFC5 over all the previous iterations of IFC is the potential that we could iterate more quickly without needing to go to IFC6, IFC7, IFC8, right? If we really do have a component system, we can add components, right? And we still need to agree, because otherwise you have random components out there and then no machine will know what they are. But I would hope that we would build something that could be incrementally added on. So maybe there is a good concept around these data spaces. We can talk about them and figure out what those components would be.
It's kind of still sticking on the same topic. With IFC5 as an example of atomizing or sort of going towards a feature-based structure of our data versus file-based. Engineering data, when it's file-based, is easily packaged up and made available to the end user, whether they're using ODA libraries or software that's been built with ODA, software that can read the proprietary data. Is there a risk to the users as we go towards this data as a service? Could users be forced to pay for access to the data they created because it's hosted on a proprietary common data environment? You said we could ask hard questions, right?
Yeah, well, as long as it's not in the Esri ArcGIS system, I think it's fine. Sorry. No, I think the issue here is, it's a good point. And we are all, when we work, I've come from industry, it's a kind of, the difference is potential and reality. In the software world, we offer a lot of potential. But the reality is that we sign up to contracts and we have to deliver those contracts. And sometimes those contracts and the contract boundaries make all of this wonderful potential of free love and information sharing using IFC kind of redundant, because my contract says I've got to knock out 5 2D drawings, release them in PDF on a Friday, or I won't get paid. And then the next recipient of that data, perhaps another consultant or a contractor, has to look at this and go, well, that's completely useless. So I'm going to have to remodel it in Revit so that I can understand what the hell these drawings mean. So the issue of that data, do I have to pay for it in the future? Well, you got to you go into this with your eyes open and look at what contracts have you engaged in. And if your contract says, I'm going to have to pay in perpetuity to a hosting service, then that's something you take on board. But with consideration of the contracts that you as a service provider take on, is that permitted? Because it may be that you are actually storing data incorrectly. And by the way, in my previous life, I ran 2 collaboration platforms for 2 engineering companies. And we always had to look at our obligation for data retention. And when we went into contracts, people say, oh, let's go and use this CD or use that CD. I go, yeah, but we've got to have the data within our environment as well, because I'm not going to keep paying another company a monthly fee when the project ended 7 years ago. So we need to have a copy, because we have a contractual obligation. In the UK, it was under hand or under deed. If it was written under hand, then it was, I believe, 7 years and then 14 under deed, which is actually a company signed rather than an individual. So there are some kind of administrative considerations. So again, the potential is we could share data and have it all in the cloud and it'll be great, but we might have to realize that the reality is what you've articulated. You might be on the hook forever. But hey, that's not the responsibility of Esri, Autodesk, Nemetschek. That's actually just the way the world is.
You also got from IFC5 is in the cloud, and you want to share parts of the IFC files, and then the transaction can come in. And you said, where does buildingSMART stops or begins? There is already the concept of OpenCDE API, so that's already a part of the storyline from yesterday after lunch. So I think that's the part to focus now maybe on, to how to deal with these OpenCD APIs and concepts and contracts. What's behind sharing data through APIs? That's a new way of making contracts, I think, too.
Okay, so thank you for your comments. Any other questions before I wrap up this session? I wanted to just maybe go back to a thing that was mentioned about timelines. So we have this agreement in place. We have a lot of interested parties here. And I was thinking around the next set of timelines and wondering whether IFC5 being in an experimental stage, whether we could in 6 months in Berlin have another similar session like this to actually talk a bit about progress around interoperability. So can we in any way consider some sort of opportunity to say, well, we have moved on a bit and we have been developing some experimental things related to IFC5, because I imagine it's going to move quite quickly when it comes through for some use cases. I was sort of wondering if I can put that to the panel, that actually this MOU, this signing of this agreement actually starts to have some fruition related to things like IFC5.
So mentioned we had this implementers assembly in Budapest, and that was actually a hackathon. So we produced IFC5 there, and we did some interesting stuff to really proof of concept, and we'll continue to do that. The status we will have in Berlin, who knows, but there's also an implementers assembly prior to the Berlin event. So I guess then we'll provide an answer if it's worth coming to look at it. But yes, I think we'll be able to show some progress there as well.
Yeah, and the thing I want to add is, so Bjorn is right. There was actual IFC5, produced. But as part of the hackathon, one thing that really struck me was I was kind of in a group which was given a simple question, do we need to store units as part of IFC5, or is it okay to not have those? And as part of that group, I kind of went through the process of thinking about this. And then I realized at the end that I had just gone through the same process that teams in my own organization had spent 2 to 3 years thinking through. So by the end, I had finally gotten to the point where I understood that the original question actually wasn't the interesting one, right? It was this tiny little part of a much bigger, more meaty question that was actually the really interesting one. So I do think there's still a fair amount of work to go with IC5 to beyond the foundation to really get to the interesting workflows and the interesting things we need to do. And I do hope that Autodesk and Nemetschek and Trimble and everyone else can contribute their already existing expertise to move it along faster. And that's what I would hope to see in Berlin, is how did we all work together to accelerate the really meaty, interesting questions that we're just barely scratching the surface of now.
Can just add, for those who are not so familiar with IFC5, so IFC 4.3 and the stuff in there, all the semantics, all the definition, etc. We're not making a lot of new in IFC5. We're just putting it into JSON in a different, it's just a serialization of the data. It's nothing new domains, nothing extended. It's just a different way of handling it, and some interesting mechanisms that allows things to reside in different files, be cross-referenced, and overlay, so you can have different versions of the same properties and all of that. I'm getting technical now, but but in terms of, let's say, the internal models in any existing IFC supporting software, I mean, you read different type of file structure, you can put it into your existing structure. You can take it from the internal structure and put it out just in a different formatting. It's not that big of an issue once we have agreed how IFC5 will look like finally. So I'm super optimistic for the speed of implementation and support once we have just agreed how it should be.
So you're definitely a fan of IFC5 then, Bjorn?
I'm a fan of everything open standard, and especially IFC5.
I am very excited about IFC5. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think
it uses it more than replaces it, right? So again, it does build off of IFC 4.3, and obviously we're not going to get rid of concepts already there, but it's more than just take IFC 4.3, make it a JSON file. If it were that, we'd be done, right? So,
has anyone in the room taken the enrolled in the IFC5 course? One. Thomas. Did you pass, Thomas? Yeah. Good. Couple of hands, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, up here too.
Okay.
Michelangelo.
I challenge everyone at these events to try it and learn for yourself. It's actually there's currently an exam next door. People taking the foundation certificate right now, so it's a good place to test yourselves. Okay, I think we can conclude unless there are any other questions or comments from the audience. I think what we've discussed some really interesting topics. I think the focus. Oh, sorry. Yeah, please. Ali.
Thank you. Charlie Brun from buildingSMART Benelux. It would be nice to get an answer from Nemetschek about the implementation of OpenCD API into their modeling software, if it's the plan or...
So we have a couple of software to support OpenCD, but not all of our brands currently support OpenCD. I think we have Ville in the room, and I guess Solibri is one of them still supporting OpenCD, for example. Hi, Ville. I don't have all the details of the roadmaps of all our different products, but that is definitely on the list. But whether or not it floated to the top of priority or not, or integration with something else was more important, I cannot answer, unfortunately. I have to go brand by brand to figure that out.
Okay, so some interesting questions. And I think thank you so much to the panelists for your willingness and openness for this panel. I've really enjoyed it. I did a panel yesterday and also felt like we can really be open in these environments. And I think that's what shows the value of buildingSMART as well. And I think we have a very exciting future. And I think, you know, with agreements like this, actually, we can, as you say, benefit end users and find some value for customers and keep innovating our products so that we gain more value. And with, you know, lots of challenges ahead around sustainability and having to calculate on carbon and things like that, having access to the right information is also really critical. So I'd just like to, thank our panelists, thank the audience for your attention, and I recommend getting down to the hall before everyone else so you can get in the line for the food. So I'll wrap up there.